Hello, everyone. It's JP here with the podcast again. As always, you will find me in an excitable state because today we have another fantastic guest. So first of all, I should just say that Karen Mahar from, let's say from Animal Flow, because that's the thing that people will know you
Mhm.
for. Karen Mahar from Animal Flow, welcome and thank you for speaking with us today.
Well, thank you for having me on. This is great to talk with you.
So we've got a lot to cover, and I say that without necessarily knowing what we're going to cover, because we're going to start with a bit of, I always like to start with some story, but everyone, as I say, knows you as the CEO of Global Bodyweight Training and the Animal Flow brand. But we all have lives kind of before all of that as well. And it's kind of interesting. Yours especially is interesting to me because we actually have a love of sociology between us, because I didn't
Mhm.
realize you had a PhD in sociology, but my degree is in sociology also. So we're obviously deeply
Amazing.
interested in people. So I don't have a exercise degree. I have a sociology degree than a lot of exercise courses. But
It's
so
very applicable though, right?
I'm
I
what,
mean,
sorry?
I think it goes with everything.
Yeah. Oh, that's the thing, isn't it? I realized I had a degree which will help me in every single job I can ever do, because it's people focused and it's understanding individuals and groups and organizations and communities and societies and cultures. So all of those
Yeah.
kind of things, it was like, well, that's going to help me with everything. But yeah, sociology degrees definitely get a lot of insults in comedy. Have you noticed that?
Yes. They just don't understand.
So you let's gonna get a timeline on you, because you came to this in 2010, but before that you were doing other things, and then before that that led you to be a person interested in doing sociology. So you growing up, what kind of person were you?
Well, I grew up in upstate New York,
All right.
and I was very outgoing. I liked attention.
Okay.
I liked people a lot. I was very involved in everything. I ended up going to college at the University of Miami, which was, 2,000 miles away from home, big change. I thought I was just going to go. I got a degree in film production. That was my undergraduate degree. And thought I was just going to move to California and make movies. And I ended up after college working for a nonprofit I was going to do it for about a year, do something good. And then I was going to go to LA and
Yeah.
sell my
Yeah.
soul and make movies. I ended up staying in the nonprofit world. And, 25 years later, I was still working for the same organization and had gotten the doctorate in sociology and was running a research institute on poverty and homelessness. So I really loved it. I loved the idea of, social justice and making the world a better place, but using good science and making informed decisions about how to solve these problems.
So that was, you were both earning a living but passionate about the same thing.
Yes,
And
yes.
then, so how would you leave a life that you are passionate about doing and enjoying and earning a living from? What even sparked something in you to change direction?
For the last probably 2 to 3 years that I was working at the organization, when you're running a nonprofit like that, it's a pretty high stress job. So I was working with a personal trainer 3 to 4 days a week, and that was relieving my stress and keeping me healthy. And my personal trainer was Mike Fitch, who eventually became my business partner in Animal Flow. But originally, it was just my way of staying healthy and dealing with the stress. But we would talk a lot as we were training. We became very good friends, and we began shooting videos just for fun. He had all these great ideas. I had the background in film production, so we would go out and we would shoot. Let's make a video about 20 ways to do a push-up. And we threw it up on YouTube. We were shooting all kinds of crazy stuff and throwing it up on YouTube just to see what would stick, see what people would like. Never really thought it was going to grow into, something, but we started getting emails from people who were like, "Hey, we love your videos. If you have a DVD, we would buy one." So we were like, "Okay, So we shot it in our spare time. We had a friend who had a gym, and we would go in at midnight and shoot from like midnight till 5 or 6 a.m. I would set up all the lights in the camera. We would shoot everything. We only had one camera, so in order to get that two camera look, we would shoot everything twice. We would like do one
Wow.
shoot, then reset, do it again. Then we spent months editing it, and we put it out, and it began selling. So neither one of us had thought that this was going to become a career change or start a company. It happened bit by bit
Mm.
until after 2 or 3 years in, and it was really beginning to explode. And then we had to make a decision, am I going to continue? Because this whole time I was still working at the other job. They eventually allowed me to go part-time because I was kind of doing both. And then felt like jumping off a cliff the day I decided I was going to resign to do this other thing full-time.
Mm.
It was like I'd only had one job my whole life, and it was with a
Yeah.
salary and a 9 to 5 and very clear things to do. And now all of a sudden we didn't even know if it was going to work. But it had become very fulfilling to me that it was a lot of creativity and new ideas, and we were inspiring people. It was a
Mm.
different way of helping people, but it was becoming really evident that people were really responding to it and that I could still reach people that way. So it didn't feel like I was giving up on making the world a better place. It was just a new way
Mm.
to.
And how cool that you had the film skills. I mean, God, I mean, it's almost like everyone needs to do film studies to be in fitness at the moment, right? But you you
Yeah.
you came to the table with those skills already in place. You were
Mhm.
already almost essentially you were a glimpse of the future, but back then, when it comes to all the skills that you would need. Um,
Mhm.
and the other fascinating thing, I guess, was that a lot of partnerships have issues because a number of the things they're both involved in, both partners are involved in. Whereas right from the start, you must have had quite clearly defined roles that weren't even necessarily spoken. They just were because that's
Yes.
what you were doing, because you came to the table with certain things, Mike came to the table with certain other things, so that there wasn't that kind of angst in the relationship of what I think this, no, I think this, because you're both trying to do the same thing.
Yes. And, we get asked a lot, how have we managed to have this friendship and business together over 15 years and to have made it, work? And I think you really hit on the key, which is that we've never really overlapped in what we were trying to do. I do the business and the film, and Mike creates the programs. And whenever we were deciding, what are we going to do next? We have a real equal sharing of ideas and a good way of working together. And yeah, we just found that we were very complementary in what we were doing
Mm.
and not trying to get into each other's realms. And we decided very early on that he was going to be the face of the program. And that was a new thing for me to accept, because back at the nonprofit, I was giving a lot of talks, and I would go to the
Yeah.
conferences, and I was the speaker, and I was the person headlining everything. And all of a sudden, I was in the background and no one knew who I was. They all knew who Mike was. But we realized very early on that for the business to be successful, people weren't going to put both of us on camera. We had to pick, and Mike was the natural leader. He had to, it was his idea, it was his program. He was very charismatic. People just really flocked to him. So once we got past deciding who was going to be the front runner, it really worked from there. It's been nice. Then, obviously there's times when we've had differences of opinion or had different ideas of what we wanted to do, but we've always had our way of, when we are deciding on something and we haven't been in total agreement on it, finally one of us will say, are you willing to die on this hill? And whoever's cares about it more, they win. So,
Yeah. Okay.
and it tends to be about 50-50 on who gets to say, this is really important to me. And
Mm.
so something as simple as, what color are we going to make the logo on this? And we'll be arguing over it. And then I'll say, you know what? I don't care enough about the color of the logo the poster to be arguing about this. If you care, you can have it. You can have the red. So
Yeah.
it's all just, we've luckily have not had anything where there was a big reason to disagree.
All right. So now I'm trying to think. You mentioned about running the business. Now, obviously, you've run an organization before, so a lot of that comes across. But then like you say, that was a salary that, yes, whilst you were running it and leading, it wasn't like your money tied up with that. And like, it wasn't like the future completely, your future was reliant on the decisions that you made and that kind of thing. So there you are doing all the nuts and bolts of running a business. Now, how, I guess what I'm asking is, how did it feel? How did it feel different to running an organization before, to suddenly you're running a company, and both your income and lifestyle and all that, they're all on the line
Mm-hmm.
from this business. You both need to earn a living. Yes, you're inspiring, you're doing all that great stuff, but behind the scenes, nuts and bolts are, you still need to put food on the table and have a roof over your head and still have money to have some fun here and there and have a holiday here and there and all the things. But it's totally on your shoulders to create that for yourself. And I know a lot of us in the industry are in the same situation. We create our own salary effectively, but
Mm-hmm.
but how did it feel? How did you adjust and how did it feel?
Well, I think that it was, two sides of the same coin. The same things about it that were really great was the exact same things that were making it really terrifying. Like you said, I went from total stability to total instability, but at the same time, it was also total freedom. When you work for a nonprofit, you have a
Mhm.
board of directors who are all brilliant people. And the nonprofit in Miami, we had, I think, a 40-member board, and they were all president of something. So I had a lot of great input and support, but I also had 40 bosses. And
Mm,
now, all of a sudden, we had the freedom to do whatever we wanted. We could make decisions and implement them an hour later,
mm,
which was really exciting and fun. On the other hand, if you're having a shortfall, the fact that we had no investors and just bootstrapped everything from the start was awesome because there was, no debt and no one looking over our shoulder asking where's their return or why are you doing that. But on the other hand, if things got tight, there was no one to, float us any money or no loans either. So it was always, yeah, it's just two sides. If you want that freedom, with it comes that level of risk and instability. Uh, when we reached the point where we were having to do a lot of international travel, which was, it was fun, but it was also getting to be, we were feeling a little bit ragged. And I think the final straw for us was we did the conference in Australia, and then we flew back to Miami, and we had a week and a half, and then we had to be back in Korea. And I was like, these are all 12-hour time differences. And I felt
mm,
like living upside down, and it was so much money on the plane tickets and everything. And at that point, neither one of us really, we both had just broken up from relationships that we were in. There was nothing really tying us to Miami. And I said, if we go to Australia, why don't we just stay there for 2 months and then we'll go to, so we made a rule that if we went somewhere, we had to stay in that time zone for a while. But as
yeah.
part of that, we gave up our house and we sold everything we owned, gave up the house, put a couple things into storage, but we were able to travel. So it's great to be able to do that kind of traveling. And, we weren't backpacking, so we were staying in nice places, but we also were not having to support, pay rent at home and survive all that. So part of
Mm,
that was the way we were able to do it was we gave up having a permanent home for a while. So we did that for a couple of years where we, every 6 weeks or so, we would move on and we were able to develop a lot of partnerships in countries, meet people. We were developing the community. It was really important to how we were able to seed animal flow and make sure it was really developing the way it wanted to around the world. And it was also just a financial decision that if we were going to do this thing and make it work in all these places around the world, we couldn't afford to pay for a house and do this at the same time. So,
mm, mm.
and it was, it was fun and it was exhilarating, but it was also pretty terrifying and exhausting.
Wow, there's so many things that you've just said there. So, like, the first thing is, like, with all the responsibility and risk comes freedom, which I totally agree with you. Like, I've lived that life. I've worked out recently. I'm 54 years old, but for the last 27 years, I've been self-employed in different. I had my own furniture company before this as well. So, and that whole time, I'm like, I don't know that I could do a salaried job now. I don't know who would be able to, deal with
Right?
it because I'm so used to the autonomy of risk and responsibility. But yeah, with the greater responsibility comes the greater freedom. And it's such an interesting thing you said there. And then you talked about the whole, okay, then we became nomads, but we had to stay in different time zones for a while, so it didn't beat you up so much, because you had to make the travel work for you. So you're adapting to the rigors of growing a brand through your own geographical locations. And when you're in Aussie, that was a really happy time that you came to dinner at my house that one time when you're in Oz. So it was like a really cool thing. And I this is a thing that you were so good at. So I want to get onto this community thing that you've been so good at. Like, you must have had dinner with so many different people and all of it, and all of us are there, and you've created an energy around, your brand, but you two as people that have buy-in from not just from me, but from thousands of people. But you have my buy-in and my absolute, support, without any leverage. It's just the relationship is what fuels my support for you guys. Now, you at your first Animal Flow retreat, I think you had like 8 people, and you've just run one in Bali with like 120 people. And I was
Yes.
watching the footage from there, just going, "This is amazing." I'm sitting at home with a broken leg, right? And I'm watching it, just thinking, "Oh my God!" And the connections that you made there. That I know there was a girl from Germany there that now lives in Perth that I'd met about 6 months ago when she was first visiting. I know she's there, and she's meeting people that I also know through your community. So this community aspect, I feel like you must have recognized that early on, because you've been amazing at doing that. So talk to me about that recognition. What part of the strategy was intended, and what are the unintended amazing outcomes as well? Tell me a bit about that whole community piece, because Animal Flow is an amazing community.
Well, when we were starting out, we were throwing videos up on YouTube and stuff, and there was not a lot of people, too many people were doing it 15 years ago. Um, but we immediately got some of the people who were doing other body weight programs or similar stuff immediately reached out, like El Cavadlo and Ryan Hirsch said, "We see you guys. What are you doing? You look awesome. Let's be friends." I remember the first time we ever talked to Ryan Hirsch was on Zoom, and it was just because he had seen what we were doing, and he was like, "We do the same thing. Let's talk. Let's hang out." We went to New York and met up with Al, and he gave us all this advice about how he was doing stuff, and he was really welcoming. And then there was other programs that were not so welcoming. They kind of looked at us and said, "Who are these newbies stepping on our territory?" And they were not going to be welcoming and didn't want us around. And we kind of thought, this is silly. It's like if you're into rock music, you don't just pick one rock band, you like it all, right?
Mm.
It's not that people have to like, if you do GMB, you can't do Animal Flow. No, if you do GMB, you're going to like Animal Flow, right?
Oh
So we should
yeah.
be friends and support each other. So we immediately just made a conscious effort to be positive, and instead of saying we need to be better than these people, if someone was doing what we were doing, we would want to meet them and let's do a jam together. Let's do something. Let's find a way to hang out and do fun
Mm.
stuff. And that way other people would introduce. That's how we met you, through, Chatty and people from Australian Fitness Network said, "You got to meet this guy." So once you put yourself out there, that like, we know we're new and we were the newbies on the block for quite a while, but we were so excited to meet people and see what they were doing, and share ideas and create together, that it just, exploded that way. So we were then introduced everywhere we went around the world. If we didn't know someone, we could say we were there, and people would be like, "Oh, I know someone, you've got to meet them." So it was just really great that way for us, meeting other program people. And then, like you talked about, we then spiraled that into working with people who were taking Animal Flow. We realized early on that people who were drawn to Animal Flow, they're already into movement. They were looking maybe for something a little bit different. And they really responded very quickly to doing community-oriented things. And we figured out that people maybe weren't so inclined to practice it a lot on their own. But if you say, "Hey, we're going to, flow together in the park or do these events," and they began coming and meeting each other, and it just worked so well. And we've been really lucky that with all the events we've done and the workshops and the retreats and mentorships, everyone always gets along so well. Like as the mentorships began getting bigger and bigger, we thought, groups this big, they tend to form cliques. Someone's going to be the odd person out, and make a very conscious effort at the mentorships and our events to make sure that's not happening. So we meet every morning with the staff and the master instructors who are there. And people always wonder, what are they talking about? They're planning stuff for the day. But what we're talking about is, how's everyone doing? Has it looked like someone was feeling shy, or does someone look left out? And like, just make sure everything's smooth and that people are having a good time, so that it becomes the culture of animal flow, that nobody's out and nobody's restricted. And it's just wonderful that everyone loves that so much that when we have these big events, people really aren't forming cliques or trying to have the cool kids or the bad kids. And it really helps people who are new to animal flow feel welcome and feel like they can be successful at these. Because I know it can be very nerve-wracking to come to an event with 120 people at it. And some of the
Well,
people, Bali, it was their 7th mentorship. They're very advanced flowists, they're up there with
yeah.
Mike on their level. And then other people had taken their first workshop 2 weeks before the event, and they were brand new. So you have to make a conscious decision of how are we going to make everyone feel involved and successful and do that. So we put a lot of time into planning how it's going to run. And then once you get there, it just feels very organic, and it feels like it was just meant to be this way, but it's actually very intentional.
Okay, so I feel like I obviously knowing you both, knowing you're both people, but you have this, the fact you've got a PhD in sociology tells me so much, but also I've met you, and the energy that I get from you is such a warm, caring, kind energy. I feel like you must have driven that inclusivity, that let's have a talk about who's doing well and who's doing what. I mean, to don't be shy to tell me your role in that. I'm really interested in, I feel like that side of things must have been driven by you.
Yeah, I think it is something that I'm always pushing. And to Mike's credit, he's always fully on board. I've never had to convince him to go along with it, but I think it does tend to be more of my passion to make sure that everyone is really feeling involved and seen. Even when we're doing things like, when we were recruiting what we call our regional leaders, which is basically the brand ambassadors of Animal Flow. So we created the program 3 or 4 years ago. We have 150 of them now. They're in 45 different countries. And when he put out the first announcement for it and said, here's, the criteria, we're looking for people to help be our brand ambassadors. And we got all the applications in, and we looked at them, and I said, Mike, we're really missing a lot of some of the females and particularly minorities in some areas. And so I was very intense on saying we need to reach out, but we need to do a better job of reaching out to make people feel like they can apply. So it's not that we wanted to, choose someone of, we didn't choose people who were unqualified or say, this person's qualified, but we're going to choose this person because they're a minority. That's not it. It was looking at the thing and saying, why is it that we had fewer minorities apply for this program than we thought we were going to have? Something made them not feel like they could apply. So we just got on the phone. We said, this is on us to make calls. So we called people up and said, why didn't you apply? We were expecting you. We see you post every day on Instagram.
Mm.
And what happened was, we'd had very clear criteria we'd written. Here's who's going to, and if we found that some people who hadn't met every single criteria point said, well, I didn't think I was qualified. And we said, well, no, you are. You're just as qualified. The people who did submit were missing half the points, but they thought, I can just put it in. So, and that was an area where it was certainly my background in sociology. I said, our pool of applicants should have looked like this if we were really making people feel welcome. So it was just, a matter of doing better outreach. It wasn't a matter of changing our criteria or our standards. It was just making sure that we were reaching out differently. And that it worked. Once we did that, then it switched up, and we felt much more confident that we had gotten a good representation of who was doing animal flow.
And again, like you've led from the top in terms of creating the culture with those regional leaders in the sense that you wanted people to show a certain role of reaching out, being helpful, non-judgmental space. I've noticed that in the animal flow communities, I watch the stuff on social media. So in the animal flow community, I've never seen a video posted where someone hasn't always started with a complimentary comment. You know,
Mhm.
I love even if people, in terms of their technical prowess, have still got a way to go, it's always a really positive way of approaching that. And it's like, it doesn't matter from where in the community that's come from. That's not just the master instructors and regional leaders. That's other instructors being just as encouraging and positive. So you've definitely fed that culture from the top down, and that's really, really beautiful to see. Now, I want to reverse back out. And again, you've said so many good things today. So now I'm gonna follow that business thread again and just pull on that. So you've gone through and you said, oh, we reached out and we spoke to other people who are in the same kind of thing. But I also remember having a conversation with you back in the day where you were like, okay, then we found that by having conversations with people who had done this kind of try to get across the globe, as it were, with a brand. So you'd speak to, you know, a mutual friend like Michel Dalcourt, for example. You saw that he'd done something with Viper around the world. So it was like, how did you go about that? So Michelle, and I'm assuming a few others, you know, you made sure you got some time in front of them and just kind of like downloaded what they had to say.
Mhm.
How did that all kind of come about? How did you meet these people,
Yeah.
and what did you really ask of them?
Sure. Well, we were introduced to Michol by Equinox fitness clubs. They're one of the premier fitness chains in the US, and they have some places in UK as well. And we very early on got connected with them. Mike had worked with them when he was 18. It was his first job as a personal trainer. So he had a good relationship with them and had stayed in contact with their fitness managers and people. By the time we released the Animal Flow video, some of his old managers were now very high up at Equinox, and he sent them the thing. He said, I want to show you what I'm doing. And they were like, oh, you know, we've always liked you. We'd love to see what you're doing. So we went to New York a couple times to interface with Equinox, and they ended up taking on Animal Flow as one of their signature programs for the first year. So they had exclusivity, and it was a great relationship. They developed the logo, they helped promote the program. But as we were, you know, working out the details of how we were going to work with them for this year that they wanted the exclusivity, they had said to us, listen, you know, we really like you guys, but you're, you know, clearly, you know, very young and upcoming company, and we're a big corporation. We can eat you alive. So we're going to introduce you to Michol, because he, Equinox had done the same thing with Viper. They said he worked with us the same way you did. He can tell you how to navigate us. They said, you know, because we obviously they couldn't tell us how to best work with them, but they said, Michel is going to help you. And through the years, he's just always, anytime we had a question about how to do something, you know, Michel, how do we break into, you know, UK? How do we begin doing workshops there? Or he gave us some of the best advice we ever had, which was when we had decided that, you know, Mike couldn't teach all the workshops anymore. We were going to start using master instructors to teach the workshops. So this is our first time with Mike stepping back and us creating that level of people who are going to represent us and deliver the workshops. And Michel said, don't hire all clones of Mike. This is where a lot of programs go wrong. They try and hire clones. He said, find rock stars and let them be themselves and deliver your program. So
Wow,
that was, oh, it was such good advice. So
that is
that's always been our
sublime.
thing. And when you look at our team of master instructors now, we think they're the best people in the world. And they are all so good and all so different. And what we make sure is that they have to be fantastic educators.
Yeah.
Um, we can teach them to do animal flow. They don't have to, we don't hire people just because they're really great at animal flow, but you can't teach someone to be a fantastic educator. So that's how we found people like, you know, Chatty in Australia, and some of the earliest people, Rich in UK, and Cliff Harksey was one of the first people we brought on. And so he was a good example of someone that we were at a conference and we were trying to figure out how do we create this master instructor program. And we had asked someone there, they said, listen, there's this guy here, Clifton Harksey. He teaches all the kettlebell courses. He's great. So we went to dinner with him and asked him all these questions about how you do master instructors. he called us the next day and said, listen, if you guys are really thinking about doing that, I want to throw my hat in the ring. I'd love to work with you. And we thought, oh my God, this is great. So he had never done animal flow before, but we said, you know, if we can get Cliff Harsky to work for us, this is going to be fantastic. So we brought him in and he was so helpful in telling us, like, how do you structure the teaching and how do you pay a master instructor? We had so many questions.
Mm.
Yeah, so that was great. But yeah, so we always go back to Michelle really steered us in the right direction and said, make sure you don't set up the program so that it's all Mike's face, because then Mike can never retire. And so when we have workshops in another country, we promote it based on who's teaching it. We don't put Mike's face on the posters. We put it's the face of the master instructor. We want them to be rock stars. So we, build them up and we try to get most of them they've all represented us at conferences. And, sometimes someone will call and say, we really want Mike Fish to come. And we'll say, yeah, but we got this really great person from your country. Let them speak. So it's really been helpful in helping them all advance their careers and become better and better presenters, and making sure that we're keeping the focus that it's animal flow and it's the education. It's not just all about Mike.
Mm. Well, so let me ask you, how were you both at that initial letting go phase? Like, how did you negotiate that in yourselves? Because then suddenly, so you've been in control of in the entire process, everything, and then you've grown this brand by traveling the world, and then suddenly you're just going, we're just going to hand off that to other people. Yes, they're great people and all the rest of it, but was there a period of time where you were just a little bit like hand in mouth going,
oh, there still is.
I hope this works, or or were you just like, no, it's just, I've managed to unattach myself from the outcome, and it will be what it's meant to be. And how did you just negotiate that in your brain?
Oh, I mean, you really nailed it. It's always that push and pull, right? On the one hand, we're excited that we're leveling up. Now we have all these things, but are they teaching the way we want? And when we had our first 3 master instructors that we brought on, and it was 4 actually. And we brought them all to Costa Rica for a weekend to train them on how to teach the workshop. But we arrived in Costa Rica and we didn't have a curriculum. We didn't have anything planned. We didn't know how we were going to teach them to teach the workshops. And I remember we all had ATVs and we would drive around we would find a cool spot and stop on the beach. And then Mike would teach them, here's how you teach the scorpion part of the workshop. And I would take pictures of them learning it on the beach. And then we would say, all right, this part's boring. Or this part of the beach is boring. Drive to a new spot. And then we would teach a new part of the workshop. And then we were all staying in a house together and we would practice beside the pool. It was so informal. And if you look at our trainings now, it's so regimented and formal. But we had to systematize it, right? Now everything, we began recording. Here's how Mike teaches, and we've probably recorded how Mike teaches the workshop. I think we've done it 6 different times now, where we've had him teach the whole thing. And because you update and it evolves, and we began writing not just the student manuals, but the master instructor manuals. Here's how you teach the workshop. And then we now have, when we have new people teaching, we'll have some of our more senior master instructors go and evaluate them and watch them teach. Or if people are going to be in the same part of the world, we'll say, go to each other's workshops. Let's see. And it's a continual, it's like a continual dance, really, of seeing. We want them to bring their own personalities to teaching and to bring their own, insights and to teach how they teach best. But we also have to make sure that no matter where someone's taking the animal flow workshop, they're still getting the same experience and learning the same program. And all students have to take the same test at the end. They submit it on video afterwards. So we see how they're coming in, and you can sometimes notice everyone who takes this person's workshop is doing this weird move, so you can kind of see that way if it's an extra evaluation step. We do Zoom calls every month with the whole team just to make sure everything's on board or still staying the same. And some of it is you just have to accept that not everyone's going to teach the same way. And I actually
Mm.
think it's a little bit harder for Mike sometimes because he's put his entire heart and soul into developing exactly the best way to teach each movement and stuff. And then,
Yeah.
people, of course, they're going to run with it and bring their own experiences. And he's gotten much better at accepting when something isn't 100% the way he was going to do it.
And I mean, I'm assuming that it goes both ways as well. You see something that someone's doing, thinking maybe we need that to be across the whole program. Like it
Yes.
may be a phrase that's used, or it may be a teaching cue, or some kind of a style thing where you're going, we kind of like what they're doing with that. Is that something we should think
Oh,
about for everyone else?
absolutely. Yes, I mean, we have entire movements that were brought out because our master instructors were doing cool things, and we thought, oh, we
Yeah.
need to make that part of the program. And just like you said, sometimes they were just using great cues, and we'll hear it, and then in the next meeting we'll say, hey, here's a great way to teach this, and we try and when we hear something that's really great to share it, and
Mm,
cross we try
that's
to make
cool.
sure that we are constantly giving all of our team opportunity to have input and to feel like they have a real ownership over the program as well, so that they can feel
That's
like they
cool.
can they can
I
you know
remember
they can criticize, they can yeah.
there was a thing, ironically, it was with Viper. I was a master instructor for Viper for a number of years, and the reason I stayed in that program was because of Michelle. Like his approach to
Wonderful.
things, but he has inspirational levels of knowledge, but also just his humanity in dealing with people and how he taught. It was like he was a really inspiration to me when I was coming through as a teacher as well. And I remember one time I was teaching a Viper. I was a master instructor, so I was teaching a instructor workshop, and a lady was there, and she just joined for the morning. And I'm like, what's going on here? But no one had told me that at that point in time, that was one of the owners of Viper. and and then she came to me at lunchtime and said, oh, I'm Jane, I'm one of the owners. And instantly I was my teeth went dry, and I'm like, oh my God. And she said, like, we have this thing where I'll ring my husband at the end of the workshop, and he'll say, everything okay? And they had this saying, yeah, McDonald's, i.e., it had to be the same everywhere in the world that you went. And she says, but you were a little bit different. And I'm like, oh no, here it goes. And then she said, you did this, this, and this. And I'm wondering whether we should bring that into all the workshops. And I'm like, oh, it was this massive. So that's why I was interested
That's
in
great.
you going, okay, is it a two-way thing? Because I really feel like if you're two-way, which you are clearly are, then you are becoming stronger as a result of the collective, as opposed to being a dictatorship. You're very much a democracy, and you're looking at absorbing the very best ideas of the time, and then those ideas will constantly change and evolve too.
Yeah, and like I said, we feel like we've recruited some of the best people everywhere. And one of Rich Scrivener from UK, he was one of our four originals. He's still with us. He's our senior master instructor. And if you've got someone like Rich on your team, why would you not want him to have input?
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know, he's such a fantastic thinker and teacher and mover. So yeah, I mean, and everyone on our team is like that. So, he's just one example of the 25. So if you're going to bring on people who are really smart and motivated and ambitious, you have to give them opportunity to have input or they're going to leave.
Yeah.
People don't want to feel like they're just robots regurgitating your own program. They have to feel like it's something that they are contributing to and can be a part of.
And they grow through you. I mean, that's what those kinds of people are looking for their own personal growth. And if you present that as an opportunity to them, then of course they're gonna invest in you. And when I talk about invest, I'm not talking financial, and I know that I'm not talking financial. They invest their heart and soul in something, they're
Oh, so
with
much.
you, and they're with you for as long as their heart and soul is being nourished and nurtured. And again, it's something you've done well. So I'm just trying to have a bit of a think about, I'm talking about single idea to global brand, and we're kind of following the thread through your own story, as well as the story of the brand. And the things, the takeaways that people will have so far from the talk is hopefully, well, a that it's possible, and it's possible without having to go out for outside investment. B, that partnerships can be difficult, but less difficult if you have your own defined roles along, in amongst that thing. But the relationship with the partners has to be a good relationship with mutual respect and that kind of thing. And then as you grow, great mentors are really important. People who've been there before. Building community, being inclusive, not in competition with people, but building a community with the people. Then find rock stars that can, yes, represent you, but only if they are also representing themselves. Then make yourself a fairly flat hierarchy and a democracy as you build this brand. Now, I know that you have 20,000 instructors now worldwide. So when I've charted that, it sounds like, oh, well, you just do this and you do this and you do this. But genuinely, I'm going to ask you the whole question, which is, how do people do that? There's going to be lots of people out there that have got this idea of a thing, either a concept or a modality that could be like animal flow, for example. How actually do you do that?
Yeah, I think first of all, Mike had a really great idea with animal flow. Was something that that's really important, I think, is that whatever it is that you're trying to sell and put out there, it's something worthwhile. So something that, and not only was it worth, but we really believed in it. And so it wasn't just something that we were trying to, we want to create a company. We didn't start by trying to create a company and then try and find a product that would let us do that. It was, we had this idea and all of a sudden we had to create the company to support the idea because it was growing. So I think that's important, that, the idea is worthwhile to begin with. And then after that, I mean, half the story is just that we didn't know what we were doing. Like, we didn't know that you can't do all these things, I look in hindsight and I'm like, oh my goodness, would we make the same decisions now? Because, now we're so regimented and now it's a business and we have all these things. But when we were starting out, it was just anything we felt like it sounded like a good idea. We're like, yeah, let's do it. Sometimes we would have, other companies would call us and say, how did you guys think to do that? Like, that was really, an interesting thing you're doing. And we were like, we didn't know there was any other way to, like, we didn't know we were doing something new. We just thought, here's what you would do. And I think it's because, we were so out of the loop on things. So, part of that is just, don't feel like you have to look to what everyone else has done or follow the rules. Like, if you think that this is how it's going to work, try it, and that's half of how we were successful, was we just kept doing what seemed like a logical next step to us. And that from people from the outside thought we were kind of doing crazy stuff, but doing that. And then not the steps you mentioned, I think that was really important, was at some points having to realize we were going to have to let go of some things. Not everything's going to go the exact way you want it to. And we said, okay, this is how it's going to be. And we would kind of, follow how things were going. When we had originally started, we were doing body weight training and animal flow stuff. And then as animal flow began taking off more and more, we just said, let's put the body weight on a back burner and follow animal flow where it's going. And it was, a lot of it was just, capitalizing on one partnership after another, that, people that we met and would work with, they introduced us to our next partners, like we were at, I think it was Equinox helped us get it, we were working with a company in UK that helped us get to be able to present at FitPro. And while we were at FitPro, we met the people from Australian Fitness Network, who said, they were sitting in the audience and saw that Mike's sessions were getting a lot of people at them, and people was something new and different, but also valid. So we went to dinner with them and they said, we're going to bring you to Australia. And then from Australia, we met other people. So it was kind of allowing ourselves the freedom to follow the path that was going, but also always making sure we were looking towards, what was next. And then, like you said, listening to people in the industry. Um, One of the best examples we had of listening to people to change the way we were going to go. This would have been in 2018. We had just finished all of the international travel. We had resettled in Colorado and said, okay, what are we going to do for our next big step? And we had a group of investors that said, we really want to see a chain of animal flow studios. Why don't you guys have, all these boutique animal flow places like Orange Theory and all these other places? We said, okay, let's think about this. And the first thing we did was call all the people we'd met at all the fitness conferences, particularly anyone who, if they were CEO of a fitness chain, we said, we really have some questions for you. So went to a lot of dinners, did a lot of phone calls. Because we had always been kind and nice to people, they were willing to give us the time and give us their feedback, write a list of questions about what would you do. And what we kept hearing from every person was, you are crazy to try and do this in this climate.
Wow.
Do not launch a chain of things. Don't do that. You need to go digital. Digital's where it is. Like even like people who are the president of, they had, 50 health clubs said, I wouldn't do this. Go digital. So we said, okay. We turned the investors down. They couldn't believe we were doing this because they had said, however much money you need, let's do this. We turned them down and said, all right, let's make an app. Let's go online. So we did it, again, most of it we just did ourselves. We found a company that could put us on the app, and we launched that app in September of 2019. That was Animal Flow on Demand. And
Oh
then
my
by
God.
February,
Timing.
COVID. And we thought, oh my God, we could have been the owners of 100 places that were just closed. And instead we had an app, and our subscribers like went up by 1,000% in a period of 3 weeks. And all the other people who were in the same, area as us called us, and they were like, how the heck did you guys know to create an app? Like,
Oh,
how come you have an app right now and the rest of us are all crashing and burning? And we said, we listened, and it was a hard decision to make because we were thinking, oh, investors are going to have all these things. It was going to be big, and the word on the street was, don't do that. Like that's not the way to go. And I just thank goodness, because it just really worked out that it got us through COVID.
oh, absolutely. I was in a similar situation to most people, but I was lucky in one way. But certainly November 2019, I closed my final studio because I was going to just be full-time in education and mentoring. But my model was travel and teach. So as you can imagine, 4 months later, I'm like, well, I can't travel anymore. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I immediately went online. Like literally, we had lockdown one day, and the next day I was going, okay, then this is what I'm going to do, and I just put it out there. And I did look around at the time, thinking, wow, where is everyone? Like out here in the online space, where is everyone? I think everyone was just thinking it's just for a month, and then we can just carry on doing what we were doing. And yeah, I think if people didn't do that quickly, I saw some people bringing out a website a year later, and I'm like, wow, like that's a
Yeah.
whole year of growth that you've just missed out on. And so yeah, I mean that it was, you in one way you could say, God, you were so lucky, but in another way you go, well, you knew people who knew stuff, and you used the relationship, not used, but you created
Hmm.
something good for yourselves through the relationships that you'd fostered along the way. So I guess the thing about that is, I was telling my kids about this only just the other day, is it's nice to be nice. It's be be kind to others for the sake of just being kind, and don't expect anything in return. Just,
Right.
if you're kind to people, they're likely to be kind to you. And sometimes they're not, and that's okay. They can go by the wayside, but others won't. And so what you've done is you've fostered great relationships without necessarily any expectation.
And that's how luck comes about, right? I mean, luck is
Mm.
really just if you've created the groundwork and set up all these potential situations, eventually, the timing is going to be right. And when the timing finally happens, then the things come into place. It's the result of all the foundations you've been building all that time. I think luck doesn't pop out of thin air. You
Mm.
create the opportunity for luck to come and make things happen. So it was like you said, on the one hand, we have a lot of people saying, "Oh, you're lucky," and you're thinking, "Well, we are certainly." The timing worked out, serendipity, it was
Mm.
great, but it was also the fact that we had spent all this time talking to the people who we'd met over the years and did some hard listening and made that decision. And I think it was meant to be, it
Yeah.
really was.
There's a little bit of that in there as well. And I know some people don't necessarily, who are listening, probably don't necessarily believe in that stuff, but there's a universal energy binding us all, and somehow some of us are better at downloading it than others, and others have glimpses of it occasionally. And then if you choose not to believe, well, then you're not looking for it in the first place, so you're not necessarily looking to channel. But there's definitely an element to that. Hey, so I guess the thing that where that leaves us now is you've gone, okay, then you've got to have a good idea to start with. Then you've got to have all those other factors that we talked about. Then you've got to have great relationships so that you've always got people to go back to and talk to and help them educate you, as well as you be able to educate. I'm sure other people come to you now and go, well, look at me, I'm talking to you now about how do you create a global brand, right? So it's a two-way thing. So we've got all of that there. But now I want to ask you about, if someone wants to try and do what you've done, what personal qualities do they have? Because I know I've seen a lot of people with great ideas not follow through and not even become a local brand, let alone a global brand. So what personal qualities do people either need to already possess or put some effort into developing in order to have the staying power to end up with a global brand?
I think you need creativity is really important. You have to be able to, when you're developing your own thing, you have to really, it's kind of cliche to say think out of the box, but a lot of times you do, because you're trying to break new ground and do stuff, and there's not always a clear path. You have to have a lot of, creativity, obviously ambition and ability sometimes to only sleep 1 hour a night. But I think with Animal Flow, one of the things that really has benefit is what we were talking about at the beginning, which is that there was two of us and we had really different skill sets. I think we've met a lot of people along the way who were running their own fitness things and had a really cool idea and were just really stuck at not being able to bring it to the next level. And a lot of times they'd say, "Oh, I need a Karen, I need someone behind me to do this." And we'd always say, "Well, there's the problem, because you're looking for an assistant to kind of do the grunt work for you. You're not looking for an equal partner who's going to work with you and take all the things." So it worked for us because Mike had all these wonderful ideas and can do the program and write the manuals, and he can teach and he can train the master instructors. And I was doing the legal and the marketing and working on, working all the back end. So the two of us together were, very synergetically able to keep all these things moving. And I see so many people who are, the solo people who are developing their own program, and they aren't willing to give up half of what they're doing because, their desire to keep control is what's holding them back, I think.
How interesting is that? I mean, I think there's a message in there for a lot of us. I definitely I struggled with that for many years. I've now got ambassadors for my own brand as well, and they're all really different to me. And the early days, that whole kind of letting go thing, it was weird, but now I'm like, wow, look how strong it is, because now we're showing, like your master instructor network, you're showing that the concept can be expressed in so many ways. It's almost like genetics and epigenetics, isn't it? It's like the gene expression. You've created this genetic material, but the expression of that material can be many and varied out there in the world, and that's a good thing. That for me, it's definitely, we get stuck in ego, I think, thinking, well, we're the only ones that can do it, and we're the only ones that care enough. Therefore, I'm going to have to employ people to realize my vision, as opposed to work in partnership with people to develop a shared vision. And it's like, whoa, it's such big stuff that you have to kind of get over in yourself to do that. So I guess
Yeah.
really you're now at this stage where now you have a brand that is successful, and then you've got the second phase, which is like, how do you keep it successful? It's like when people talk about TV series, they have a massively successful first series of a show, and then it's like they call it the awkward second series, because like, well, how do you take that and run with it and make sure that it continues in that way? So now you've got a lot of that work to do, as well as still growing. You've got a lot of that, how do we maintain our success stuff
Mm-hmm.
in an ever-changing market that also want new things put in front of them all the time as well, because we live in a digital age. I mean, where are you in you're obviously planning and doing that, but how? Like how? What's the process there?
Well, one of the things we did, because, when we first started out, and, Animal Flow, it could very easily, it could have gone into becoming a gimmicky program, or, a flash in the pan. And when we first came out, Equinox Marketing Machine did a great thing, and we were named, new fitness program of the year. Some of them were calling us fitness fad of the year. And we were like, oh no, don't call us a fad, because fads go away. So we were very conscious of the fact that we could just crash and burn, and people could lose their interest. And if we were not, when we were no longer the new hot thing, we didn't want to go away. We just wanted to become, oh, now we're just a part of the fitness industry, right? So one of the things that we wanted to do was make sure that there was a body of research created that was underpinning everything we did. So we put a lot of work into making sure there was actual research, like clinical studies done by universities that were using animal flow as the intervention. And they began, quadrupedal movement studies or quadrupedal movement training. And we were really working behind the scenes with a lot of the people that were originally doing that research. And we would do that by, offering them all of our resources. If someone who is working at a university and said, I'm kind of interested in this, I don't know what to do. And we say, okay, first of all, we're going to get you certified in animal flow, of course, for free. And then if you need participants in your study, we'll help you with that. So we've had a lot recently where they were doing people who've never done animal flow versus people who do practice animal flow. So we help with the recruiting. And then once the studies were done, a lot of the studies, when they're published, they get buried in academic things that are not accessible to the public, which is the opposite of what we needed. So if you pay a fee, they will release it to the public. So we paid the fees on behalf of the researchers. So, obviously we can't get involved in the research itself, because that wouldn't be ethical. But once the research is published and it said, quadrupedal movement training, specifically using animal flow as the intervention protocol, had all these positive results, we would pay the money to make sure it was then released to the public. And then we can take that, and when we're going to the media or whatever, and they, want you to crawl around like a crab for their little video, and we could say, but here's the research that shows this is a real discipline. It's legitimate. It is better for you than all these other things. And that is helping us to, one of the ways that we are looking at to make sure that we didn't die off as a fad, but something that now can become just a part of every program. When a fitness chain, if they call us and they say, we're interested in animal flow, and the first thing we say is, that's great, and we know that your first instinct, if you're a chain, is let's put animal flow in the group class schedule, which is fine. Animal flow can be a good group class, but the way you're going to be more successful as a chain is to get your personal trainers certified and just make using animal flow a part of your everyday personal training for clients. Because when you put it on the schedule, classes come and go. It's going to be like step aerobics or something, and it's not quite as successful. make it just part of your company's culture that you use quadrupedal movement training to help people become better at lifting or whatever they're doing. So we try and sell it to them that way. And that's how it ended up living at Equinox. We were on their group class schedule for a year, and then it fell off as they took on other things, but they still send their personal trainers. They all still get certified in animal flow. So that's another way that we looked at trying to make sure that it became, established. Like we say, we want people will just look at animal flow as one part of your training program, just like, I do yoga, I run, we wanted, it became like a thing and not just a program that you do for fun once a year.
And even that whole thing, like when you started introducing the term quadrupedal movement training, QMT, straight away when you did that, I'm like, oh my God, that's clever. Because again, what you've done is you've looked at that and you've gone, okay, Animal Flow is a brand, but there's an umbrella under which that sits. And if we become part of the umbrella, well, that again establishes Animal Flow as something a bit bigger than this is a fitness brand. Do you know what I mean? So as soon as I saw you do that, it was like, oh, I can see what they've done here, and it's really clever. Now you're part of the umbrella, and you're not
Now
just
it's a
this
actual discipline, and
thing. Yeah, exactly.
happens to be the best program in that discipline.
Exactly. So it was, again, I could see that was, and then QMT started appearing a lot more in your social media output and that kind of thing. So much as for example, I broken leg as well, am doing less animal flow at the moment, as you can imagine, but
A little hard with a
it
broken
doesn't
leg.
go unnoticed, even with someone who's just watching social media. It doesn't go unnoticed, and that stuff goes in. So unconsciously people are absorbing that. And this is the other thing that you guys are really good at is, yes, you put this stuff out there, but you're also really good at ensuring that the message that's inbuilt in what you're putting out there is yes, it's consciously put there, but it's actually really subtle, and people are taking that on without necessarily kind of realizing, oh, I can see, oh, are they trying to, do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, well, it's completely authentic and true, but at the same time, you just weave the language in and show your growth and development over time through your posts and through your communications and through your media work. So, congrats on that as well. And I know you won't have done that without there being some thought and some planning and some strategy beforehand, because that's the nature of you guys.
And that goes back too to me coming from being a social scientist, that I felt very strongly from the beginning that we had a feeling that animal flow was good for all these reasons, but I said, we need to do the research to prove it. I like the data. I want a cited study. We need to have it peer reviewed and published. We can't just say, yeah, it feels like it's better, because maybe it wasn't, but it was nice that when we started, the research started coming out, that our gut feeling was right, and that was a good feeling.
All right, so I know I've had you here for a good hour now, so I should try and kind of move towards some sort of closing questions. But one would be, what message do you have for someone out there? So those people that just go, I've got something, and I feel compelled to make this a much bigger thing than just what I'm doing in my sessions. Like, what would you say to those people?
If you feel like you've got a great idea, you should absolutely follow it. You should expect to have a lot of ups and downs. Nothing ever goes the way you think it's going to. But if you're willing to put in, the time, and if you really believe in it, you can make it happen for sure. You just have to know, there's going to be bumps. Everything. It's a, you think it's going to be the straight path, and it's the crazy path. But I think that's part of the fun of the journey of it. You have to make sure that you are really having fun doing it, because it's going to be your life 24/7 forever. And if you aren't having fun along the way, then why are you doing it? It can't be just for the money, because living your life or just working just for the money, you're never going to be satisfied. That won't be it. So, I have to say, everything we've done has just been a joy. We've been able to travel around the world and meet people and have all this great time. And it's because we very consciously, when I say we, I mean Mike and I very consciously would say, there are things we could have done that may have potentially made us more money, but they were going to be a lot less fun, or maybe didn't feel like it was the right thing to do for the staff or the people around us. So we've always just made sure that the decisions we were making were not strictly financial, but also made sure it just felt right for our life, which makes it livable and made it
Mm.
feel achievable and something that we could continue, so that if there were times when things weren't necessarily going like how we thought, it still wasn't something that we felt like we regretted what we were doing. I'd say, for someone who's thinking they want to do it, just do it and just know that your expectations however it works out, is going to be totally a different path than what you think it will be. But if you can embrace that and have fun doing it, then it's worth it.
I mean, I feel like you've just thrown a gold nugget straight into people in between people's eyes, just with those little remarks themselves. And finally, like you as Karen, I like to ask a final question that's just about what is it that you want for yourself and everyone else in the world? Like you, Karen Mahar, not necessarily you, Animal Flow, or you, quadrupedal movement training or global bodyweight training, but you, what are you looking for that you would love for everyone and yourself to have? You may already have it, but for everyone in the world, what do you want for us all?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think that, the opportunity for people to feel, I think for people to feel, happy and fulfilled in their personal lives.
Mm.
I don't think it's money that does that, although I do think having, not having enough to live is a source of stress and anxiety that is underrated. So I would love for their, pie in the sky. I want everyone to, have enough to live and for the world to be okay. But I think what that leads to is people being able to feel self-fulfilled. For me, I think that one of the biggest things in my life is a year ago, I met my current partner. I'd been single, or had, relationship that hadn't really worked out. And I'm the happiest I've been over the last year. And it's because I'm, fulfilled and at peace. And even with all the difficult things that have happened in the year, in the fitness industry and, politics in the US, and things have been a little bit stressful over here. I feel happy and fulfilled on a daily basis, and that's because I'm satisfied with my own life. So
Yeah.
that's it. I think for people to feel satisfied with where they are enables you to, it gives you the space to be kind to others and to not feel like you need to make sure other people don't have more than you. I think that's a source of a lot of strife in the world, is people not only want themselves to be okay, but they want to feel like no one else has more than them, And I think if you're truly happy with yourself, other people's success doesn't really bother you as much.
Wow, and even more so, I guess you'd celebrate their success for them as well. You'd be happy for them,
Yeah.
It's a very
Yeah.
different thing when you see success and happiness. What are you feeling? Do you feel happy on yourself? Because if you don't feel happy, then something's going on for you there. There's something unfulfilled in you. If you're looking at someone else going, that makes me feel bad seeing your success, well, you've got some work to do, right?
So yeah, and there's obviously there's so much of that, and that
Mm.
it so many things, people's own sense of unhappiness or insecurity or whatever's going on, and then it just funnels into, it can start off little, that you're just, people are not being kind to their neighbors, or, something that sounds silly like that, but it spirals into, how you vote and how the systems are then built with people. Are you looking to, make sure that everyone's okay and that we're living, nicely as a society? Or are you just worried about, I've got mine, you can take yours somewhere else,
Yeah, yeah. Karen, let me just thank you for allowing this conversation to go wherever it went, because it was really fascinating. And I feel like there's so many nuggets in the theme that we had with the title of this, but at the same time, you shared so much of your own kind of personal thoughts about it, which have augmented it so much better with some personal thoughts, feelings, and stories. So I really appreciate you being open with us today.
Oh, thank you. This was just fun. It's
Yeah.
great to speaking with you. Good questions. They were fun.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad it was fun for you. It's always fun for me, but yeah, you do wonder if people have answered these questions 1,000 times before sometimes.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, it was, yeah, great conversation. Didn't feel like
Thank,
an, felt like we were just chit chatting. So that was fun.
well, that's definitely, or it's definitely what we were doing, quite frankly. We've just pressed record at the start. So thank you so much for talking to us today. It was really awesome and so thought-provoking. There's so many bits of gold in there for people that they can take
I hope
away.
so.
And obviously they can find you through any animal flow, quadrupedal movement training, global bodyweight training. Follow them. Your profile is in the notes anyway. So if anyone needs to reach out to you, they can. But in the meantime,
Absolutely.
thanks from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.